Hello everyone, my name is Stephen and today I'd like to talk about the role that spirituality can play in today's world and how being more aligned with your spiritual path can lead to some understanding that lies beneath all the conditioned exterior that we pick up throughout our lives. All throughout our lives we're told many non-truths. These non-truths about our being and who we really are. All the knockbacks that we receive in the form of rejection, which can make us believe that we're somehow not good enough or that we're somewhere faulty and that we don't fit in. And this can be expressed in the body as shame or guilt, and it can even show up as fear or anxiety. And this can make us become kind of like an avoidant person and not wanting to go back to that place or that situation again for fear of that perceived pain getting worse, which can create a sense of unease. It can create a sense of unease within ourselves. So ever since I was young, I've always felt out of place. I can quite often think when I used to disassociate from life, thinking that somehow that it was me that was to blame. I quickly learned that any type of conflict was bad, and I would try and avoid any type of conflict as well at all costs. But over time, this has started to have a negative effect on my mental, physical and spiritual well-being. And it can cause people to detach from reality, which is what happened with me. We can identify with our minds and then go down all the places that our minds can take us. Like, for instance, living in some sort of idealised future, stuck in the past, thinking of better times, or in my case, the negative aspects of the past, always reliving old wounds and giving new life to whatever the perceived situation was, holding on to the resentment and even the anger, and that anger could lead to me hating somebody, another person, maybe somebody I know, maybe somebody I don't, but I was always blaming and only seeing really my own perspective. And if you think about it, it's like telling a story over and over again to the point that it gets embellished that much that you really can't tell what was the truth anymore. And also when projecting into the future, which is something that I used to do quite often, and again so much so that you really become kind of invisible and you cease to exist in the present. You then might become so identified with like the next big thing, like it was always the next big thing, and then I'd start to believe that's the thing that's going to make me happy. So you chase that illusory dream, and it's to no end. And I mean, these are good intentions. You always start off with good intentions, and we always want to better ourselves. But when it comes at the expense of losing yourself to an illusion, I think then what happens is we become so out of touch with what's most important. And obviously the most important thing is our true selves. And I think that we strive for authenticity. I am neurodivergent, and I think authenticity for somebody who's neurodivergent is very important. But we can kind of fall into the trap of believing in our thoughts, which can send us down a path of, let's say, like false narratives. We can be deceived and consumed by our thoughts, and that can lead to negative consequences, and it has done for me. And also it can lead to negative feelings, as thoughts and emotions are intrinsically intertwined. And at some level, we kind of know this, which can make it even more frustrating, because we know that there is something that is holding us back, and that thing is this endless stream of thoughts and feelings. I used to think exactly the same. My mind would tell me, like, yes, it's them that are different, or they haven't lived the life that I have, or I always knew that I was right. Everyone has had different life circumstances, and no one can take that away from you. And no two lives are ever the same, and we've all had uniquely different life experiences. I will tell you that I have had many lessons so far, and many a struggle along the path, my journey. I have gone through abuse physically, mentally, spiritually. I've had addiction problems, and that was for over 25 years of alcohol abuse, substance abuse, and generally many other negative coping mechanisms throughout my life that have essentially held me back for many, many years. And all these things, they've kept me in a kind of like a low vibrational state. I think that's why some people, they call it rock bottom, because essentially what's happening is we're operating at such a low frequency. But what really shifted was where I started to put my awareness. I was endlessly searching or seeking outside myself for answers. Again, I was trying to get well and seeking answers in the material world, things like self-help books, endless YouTube videos, seminars, Alcoholics Anonymous, rehabilitation centres. I would look for relationships, supplements, exercise, and many other methods. There's that many to list. Some of these were helpful, but they only really lasted so long before I kind of slipped back into old patterns. And I used to hate it when people used to say things like, "Oh, being neurodivergent, it's a superpower." I even became sort of like resentful towards those people as well, as it didn't really seem like there was any type of power in my life. But what really changed for me was getting to know what's beneath all the conditioned layers, all the conditioning that I'd had throughout my life. I used to hyper-focus on anything that made me not have to deal with the real me. And what I mean by that is the essence of what we truly, deep down, at the core of our being, are. and I believe it's often called by many different names. One name is spirit, or some refer to it as the higher self, the soul, the subconscious mind, Jungian philosophy. I was always looking for the truth, always searching behind everything. And it was only when I had a realisation that there was a presence or an awareness that was aware of the thoughts. These were the same thoughts that told me that I wasn't good enough, the same thoughts that I will never be able to quit drinking, that no one liked me, and these same thoughts that had plagued me for most of my life. That was when I had a kind of a breakthrough. I learned something. I learned something about the real me, the being within this conditioned self, the layers of the persona called Stephen. I knew something shifted within me on a deep level that I couldn't really fully understand at first. The best way I can describe it is a space had basically opened up within me, and for the first time that I can actually remember, there was a sense of peace. At first I was confused as to what had actually happened. I would periodically burst into tears and would get waves of emotion that would wash over me. I could feel myself letting go of all the past. And for the first time, I felt a real sense of freedom from thoughts and negative emotions. And from then on, things really started to change for me. My awareness had expanded on such a deeper level that I started to find joy and bliss in the smallest of things. My thoughts had slowed down to a snail's pace, and it was if a new space had basically opened up within me. I was in a blissful state for days on end. It was kind of like a snake, I suppose, shedding its skin, or a butterfly emerging from a cocoon. It was really quite beautiful. And since then, I've had many a great insight about my true being, and that of being part of the great divine, that's like how I like to define it. Things started to make sense as my mind had slowed down quite considerably. And as a result of that happening, my emotions were now starting to level out. Gone was the fear, anxiety, and in its place, a sense of hope and a sense of peace and acceptance. Acceptance for what is, rather than fighting with essentially myself. I think what really happened on that day is that I surrendered. And by doing that, I've opened myself up to the nature of what is and to my true self. I'd like to appreciate my thanks and appreciation for this. This is important to me, and I plan to continue making regular videos. And as I continue to share my wisdom with others, I'd like to thank everyone for listening, and I'd really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe, as this is now my first video and hopefully one of many. Again, I'd like to thank you all, Bye.